Hello Legion, this is Hadrian. Thank you for being here and welcome to an in-depth early overview of Faithful Cartographer, which is likely the Long Dark's last ever test branch build and early access patch. Even if this doesn't turn out to be the last one, the May test branch is almost certainly the most significant test branch update to date, given that the game is scheduled to release on PC, Xbox, and PS4 in August. The content previewed in this test build is tentatively scheduled to go live by the end of May 2017 in the final version of the Faithful Cartographer update. If there are no major changes to that patch from what we're about to see, you can use the following overview and gameplay footage as an indicator of that patch's changes to the game. Even if there are major changes, we're going to cover a lot of exciting ground in the next couple of minutes. Because while Faithful Cartographer doesn't revise any existing gameplay systems to the extent that Resolute Outfitter changed the clothing system, again I'm talking about degree of change, it definitely makes some revisions, but not to the extent that Resolute Outfitter did. This test build version of the patch makes major updates and changes to several aspects of the game, and it also brings back some old favorites that were removed in past patches as Hinterland explored different designs for various systems. I'm about to go over the patch notes in some detail. I'll preface all of this by reminding you that what you're about to see is test code available only to users who are opting into the test branch on Steam. So this is even less of a finished product than the typical early access gameplay session of The Long Dark. Other than that, most of this patch content is already public knowledge given the release announcements, so Hinterland's fine with no heavy spoiler warnings this time as long as we're all aware this is an early, unfinished look at some of the latest updates to early access. Let's get straight to it. After I've covered the patch, I'll have another video online immediately following this one so I can dive into the game for about 30 minutes. I'll be playing a short 5-off series in Stalker mode to test the new content, so more information on that release schedule will be in the video. I haven't booted the test branch up at all yet, so what you see in the next video will be my first time seeing all of it as well. I do encourage you to go ahead and listen to the overview first because this really is a detailed and wide-ranging patch. But if you'd like to just watch the gameplay as a way of seeing the changes for yourself, click the card that just popped up on your screen and you can watch that video right now. So in keeping with the test build's official name, the name of the actual patch, the most significant new addition to the game might be considered also the biggest new addition to the game's core systems since climbing, I suppose. I tried to think of a few other, changes that seem as big as this one when it comes to new systems being added that we've never seen before in any way. And this is just so much bigger than climbing. In-game charcoal cartography is now a gameplay option in The Long Dark. Charcoal can now be created in-game as well by burning any fire for 1 hour. For every hour that you're burning anything, there will be some charcoal that you can retrieve from that fire. You can then use the charcoal at any given location, which the charcoal is not, of course, permanent. It gets used up by this process, but you can use the charcoal at any given location on your in-game map to draw a permanent map of everything in your line of sight. It's important to note that this feature is completely optional, so you don't have to use it if you don't want to, and it also does not show your location on the map even if you've completely mapped an area, so in keeping with The Long Dark's traditional approach to grounded and realistic survival gameplay that we all have come to expect, that is not changing. There's no As they said in the patch notes, there's no GPS functionality here. It doesn't show your location on the map, so you still have to kind of figure out where you are and use landmarks to navigate, even if you're using your map. This also only works for exterior locations, and just so you know, for the test build, this feature currently only works in Mystery Lake, so we're going to be playing in Mystery Lake when we jump into the actual test gameplay. Meanwhile, some of the most glaring updates to the game as we already know it are some pretty awesome improvements to the interface, basically polishing everything off as we prepare for the game's release. But it's more than just polish. While every single interface screen has been updated to a near final version, so the game will have a new feel and aesthetic for those of us who have been playing for the past few years, even bigger is that eating, drinking, and first aid are now accessible from the radial menu. This means that eating, drinking, and healing on the go are now possible. No more stopping to open your inventory when you want to have a quick snack. Each radial option will be populated by backpack items automatically, so players can still micromanage and eat directly from their packs if they want, or they can just stuff their faces really quickly on the move without digging into their inventory, as long as they don't mind whatever item they are going to be consuming at that specific moment. Currently, the only screen that hasn't been updated as part of these changes to the interface is the journal, but all crafting that doesn't require a workbench or forge can now be done directly from the journal as well. Several environment interactions will now also have a hold requirement, which means a new variety in the type of mouse or button commands we'll be using to interact with certain types of drawers or other things that were opening up in the environment as we explored. They've also added a new element to the heads-up display, which, similar to condition meters, serves to indicate whether you are giving off a strong scent, which might be detected then by predators. Another item on this update's long list of brand new systems is stone throwing. If you find yourself down a rifle or an arrow and you need to make a valiant attempt at scaring off the wolf on your tail, pick up a rock and throw it at him. It might not work, but you can give it a shot. You can throw rocks now. I'm also particularly excited about this change as it not only adds an additional way to deal with minor predators, but also deepens the immersive aspects of an already immersive survival experience. You can also use the rocks to stun rabbits, which leads me to rabbit harvesting. Stunned rabbits can be picked up and either killed or let go, meaning we now have a new way to interact with and potentially harvest these guys. Carcasses can also be carried in your pack and harvested later, so not only do we have a new method of hunting rabbits, but we also can collect and transport their bodies in a more flexible and efficient way. Speaking of harvesting and efficiency, another major brand new addition to the game's core mechanics is that harvesting animal carcasses just became one of two options we get when we have access to a particular corpse. Harvesting is still there, still doable when you want to get meat, skin, and guts the quick and dirty way, but carcasses can now be quartered as well. Quartering is slower, but it produces higher meat yields. Basically, if you are able to take your time and do something right, you'll be rewarded for it, right? Hide and guts will automatically be stored in your inventory as you quarter your kill, so that's just part of the process. You don't have to worry about doing that separately. Each piece of a quartered carcass then becomes a meat bag, which can then be harvested for meat and larger quantities of meat, again, because you've done it the slower, more efficient way. Be careful though, because any spot where you have quartered a kill will attract hungry wildlife to that location, and carrying a meat bag around will give your body a scent which predators can easily track. And if this patch wasn't so full of amazing new additions to the game, I'd say this was one of my favorite aspects of the update. Torch throwing has been added back into the game, or flare throwing. Brandishing has been removed, as have brands themselves, so all of that gameplay where you're waving, fire in predators' faces is gone. This means that you can just pull torches out of fire the way you used to be able to do, but they won't last as long as crafted torches. And of course, you can throw torches and or flares at wolves to scare them off. Moving along, those of you who follow Raphael von Lierop closely on Twitter may have seen him tweeting some beautiful images a while back, showcasing weather effects and color updates that we hadn't yet seen in the release version. That code is now part of Faithful Cartographer. A number of new lighting and weather effects have been added at different times of day, so there should be new things to see at all points of the game, and I'm very excited about that. Environment fog now stays much farther away from the player as well, except when it's actually foggy, meaning that the game's draw distance may not have changed, but more of its full draw distance is now visible to the player because the fog is not as close at all times. Even, again, when it's not actually foggy, you've got that distance fog that kind of hides the environment from you. It's going to hide less of the environment now. And one of the great things about that change, I just have to say, is not just that the game world will look better and feel more realistic because you can see farther, but also from an under the hood and development standpoint, I think this shows that Hinterland are reaching a high level of confidence in their code's rendering capabilities, and they're confident that they can let more of their world be visible wherever we look while we're playing. Next up, we actually have the ability now to select our weapon during a struggle, and weapons could potentially break during a struggle, but I don't think that's been added yet into the code. In the new build, wolf struggles in particular are going to give you the selection of your weapon of choice, and each weapon has different effects. The knife, an improvised knife, for instance, is designed to do damage and puncture the wolf's hide, making sure it bleeds out faster if you win the struggle and it runs away. The hammer and pry bar, though, are designed to scare the wolf with heavy, blunt hits that don't do as much damage, but they reduce the duration of a struggle. So when you're not confident you'll survive a struggle due to existing health concerns, maybe fatigue or something else that's just making you worry that you might not be able to fight a wolf for very long at all, you can use this option to end it as quickly as you can, scare the wolf off, and get the hell away while you can. The hatchet and improvised hatchet are designed to kill the wolf during the struggle by slashing with their larger blades. The wolf won't bleed out as fast if it gets away, as the wounds aren't as deep, but there's an increased chance that you'll actually kill it while you're fighting it. And finally, of course, you can barehand the struggle. As always, this does low damage, and the wolf will run away if you win. Now, Hinterland does note that all of this is variable based on the difficulty level you're using, how fatigued you are at the time of the struggle, and other interactions and gameplay states dependent on your particular playthrough. And just to wrap up this list with 3 quick but nevertheless important updates. First-person presence, meaning the ability to see your hands when you're using various items and weapons, has now been added for the rifle, the bow, distress pistol, and emergency stim, and it's been updated for the lantern, flare, and torch. Hinterland also notes that they've made a bunch of audio updates to deepen the immersive aspect of the Long Dark's various environment and inventory interactions. And finally, graphics options too have been improved for the PC, which is not to say the game has had any major graphical overhauls aside from the weather changes, but you now have more control, more settings that you can use to customize the game's look to optimize performance on your rig. If you're a console player, your game will of course use fixed settings optimized for your Xbox or PS4's hardware. If I can say PS4, and I can say PS4 because in a few months the Long Dark will be a thing on PS4. And that's it. In all, I think this is a really exciting update. It makes some incremental refinements that help reinforce the notion that this game is finally getting ready for release at last. I don't want to share any more extensive thoughts for now since this is just a test branch release, which means more content is probably going to make it into the final version of this patch, and what's here, what we've already talked about, could change. In addition, the surprising amount of new content in this patch, in particular cartography, is literally game-changing. Literally game-changing. It'll be interesting to see how these new mechanics feature in the game and how they play out, so I'll reserve judgment until I've seen them and played around with them myself. As I mentioned up front, I'm going to be kicking off a short mini-series in the test branch build to check out some of the new features. Remember that this isn't the finalized patch code as of the time of this recording, and there may be more bugs than you usually expect in early access. In particular, they've noted a few in the test notes that are current issues with this kind of unfinished code, so that is definitely going to be a possibility. That first episode should be linked on your screen or playlist, if not right now, in just a second. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this overview, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to follow along if you're not subscribed already. I'll be having a new season of my long-running Against All Odds series in the Long Dark starting next month, which is of course June 2017. So in addition to the 5-part mini-series you're about to see, there's more just around the corner. Look for those episodes in my 6 p.m. time slot. Comments are always welcome. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.